So a little while ago, I just received news that a close friend of mine from home has just passed away. It's such a sad time. Yeah, I've got all sorts of emotions running through me. And I've just been sitting here reflecting on the time when I lost my dad, when I lost my mom, and just thinking how difficult it is, especially when you receive such news and you live far, far away. As much as you prepare for death, I mean, preparing in terms of expecting that it can happen at any time, because death is part of life, unfortunately. As much as you know that it can happen, when it actually happens, you're never really prepared. You're never really prepared. And that was the case when my dad passed away. The fortunate part was I was able to go and bury him. But when my mom passed away, that was the hardest part for me because I couldn't go. I couldn't go. And it's because my papers, I was still waiting for my visa to be processed. And when I tried to find out how to go about things, if I could go home and bury my mom and come back, I was told, well, you can always withdraw your application. But unfortunately, it means it can jeopardize your chances as well when it comes to your status. So, yeah, that was a very difficult time for me. And unfortunately, I couldn't go to bury my mom. So you can imagine what I felt. You can imagine what that was like for me. It was very, very painful. The fact that I couldn't be there, I couldn't go and mourn with the others, do all the things that you need to do to bury someone. I couldn't take part. Dealing with the death of a loved one, someone close to you, is hard. It's even more challenging if you can't attend their funeral. And this is the experience of many people. Even if you're not an immigrant living abroad, I mean, we have seen this in the last few years when we went through that period when we had to deal with COVID. Many people lost their loved ones, and unfortunately, they couldn't attend their funeral because of COVID. They couldn't travel, and because of the circumstances, the situation, it was so challenging. So this is the situation. If you live abroad, you will lose people close to you. You will lose friends. You will lose relatives. You will lose your parents. Unfortunately, this is the reality of life. And there are times, unfortunately as well, there are times when you can't attend the funeral. Maybe it's because of the visa situation. Maybe it's money, because the ticket to go to Africa especially is expensive. But when it comes to money, I don't see it as a huge problem necessarily, because you can always borrow money to go and bury your loved one. That is something you can always do. You can borrow, you can even go to the bank and ask for a personal loan. That is something you can do. You have options. But when it comes to immigration issues, that is a different matter, because yes, as much as you want to bury your loved one, but also you don't want to lose your status, because it's a catch-22. It is a difficult choice to make, because you also recognize that, okay, this person, I loved this person. Because as much as you want to go and bury your loved one, because, it's your loved one, you also realize and recognize that, okay, they are gone. You are not going to change that situation. So you're thinking, do you really want to risk it when it comes to your immigration status? Because once you ruin your chances, then what are you going to do? So it's a catch-22 situation. It's really, really difficult. So what can you do when that happens? How do you deal with it? I mean, all I can say is, this is the time when you really need to be resilient. I mean, as much as it is difficult, you just have to be resilient, and you just have to accept the situation for what it is. And you also have to find your own way of mourning, your own way of finding closure. Of course, in the future, you can always go and do whatever it is that you need to do. But yeah, dealing with death of a loved one, especially when you're so far away and you can't be there, is one of those difficult situations that unfortunately some of us will have to deal with. So if you ever find yourself in such a situation where you have to attend an emergency, whether it's funeral or a different type of an emergency, if you ever find yourself in such a situation and you're still waiting for your visa to be processed, this is what I know according to the Home Office. If you've submitted your application and you're still waiting for a decision, but now you have to travel, if you ask for your documents back, you can ask for your documents to be returned back to you. This is something that you can do. But unfortunately, that also means that your application is officially withdrawn. It means that you have withdrawn your application. And with that withdrawal, unfortunately, you may lose your stay in the UK. But of course, immigration rules keep changing. They change all the time. This is why I always say it is worth going to the source. Make that phone call to the Home Office, explain your situation and ask for advice. They will be able to tell you exactly what you can do and what will happen when you do that. So it is always worth finding out from the source, from the Home Office, because if you ask on social media, of course people are going to give you some answers. They're going to tell you what they know or what they heard, but unfortunately it all depends, because as I always say, when it comes to immigration rules, some things may also depend on your circumstances, on your situation. And also the last thing you want to do is to withdraw your application only to discover that that's the end of it. You have lost your stay in the UK. That is the last thing you want. And as I said earlier, sometimes it's a matter of just being honest with yourself, just weighing things up, because yes, as much as you want to go and bury your loved one, but you have to ask yourself some difficult questions as well. Is it really worth it? Because at the end of the day, that person is dead. They are not coming back. And this is one of those hardest decisions I had to make myself. So I know it's hard. This is the hardest part of living abroad. And unfortunately, this is something some of us will have to deal with, I'm afraid.